Paris, March 18, 1314. A crowd gathers at the western edge of the Ile de la Cité. The air is thick with anticipation, fear, and the acrid scent of wood being stacked for a pyre. Two men stand bound before the assembled masses. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and Geoffrey de Charnay, preceptor of Normandy. As the flames begin to lick at their feet, de Molay's voice rises above the crackling fire and the murmurs of the crowd. His final words echo across the Seine, carrying a curse that would haunt the French monarchy for centuries to come. Pope Clement, King Philip, within a year I summon you to join me before the throne of God. The execution of Jacques de Molay marked the official end of the Knights Templar, a military and religious order founded 2 centuries earlier to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. From humble beginnings, the Templars had risen to become one of the most powerful organizations in medieval Europe. Warrior monks who answered only to the Pope, bankers to kings, guardians of vast wealth, and keepers of secrets. Their downfall came with stunning swiftness. At dawn on Friday, October 13, 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the simultaneous arrest of all Templars within his kingdom. The charges were shocking: heresy, idolatry, obscene rituals, and homosexuality. Under torture, many knights confessed to spitting on the cross, denying Christ, and worshiping a mysterious idol called Baphomet. For 7 years, the Templars languished in royal dungeons, while their vast network of commanderies, estates, and treasuries across Europe were systematically dismantled. Pope Clement V, under pressure from the French king, officially dissolved the order in 1312. What remained was this final act, the execution of the leadership, the last embers of a once mighty flame. Yet there is something curious about this ending. Despite the meticulous planning of King Philip's agents, not all Templars were captured. The royal coffers, desperately in need of the legendary Templar treasure, found the vaults mysteriously emptied. The Templar fleet, anchored at La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast, vanished overnight. These were not the actions of men caught unawares, but of an organization that had anticipated betrayal and prepared accordingly. In Scotland, excommunicated and at war with England, Templars found refuge under King Robert the Bruce. Portugal simply renamed their Templars the Knights of Christ and continued as before. In the remote regions of the Pyrenees and the Swiss Alps, isolated commanderies fell silent, neither surrendering nor acknowledging the Pope's dissolution. The official history tells us the Templars ended in those flames in Paris. Yet across Europe, whispers began almost immediately. The Templars had gone underground, their vast knowledge, wealth, and network preserved in secret. The arrest had not been a surprise, but expected, their apparent destruction merely a transformation. Consider the peculiar case of the Templar chapel at Monceau in southern France. Its walls are covered with mysterious geometric symbols, Masonic-like imagery, and esoteric decorations that make little sense for Orthodox Catholic knights. After the dissolution, the chapel remained in use, but by whom? Local legends speak of secretive gatherings continuing for centuries, of hidden chambers and tunnels beneath the flagstones. Historians have noted their appearance well after 1312, almost as if they were markers, a silent language for those who knew how to read them. The Chinon parchment, hidden in the Vatican's secret archives until its rediscovery in 2001, reveals that Pope Clement privately absolved the Templar leadership of heresy even as he publicly condemned them. Was this merely political expediency or evidence of a deeper game? Did the Pope's absolution provide the theological justification for the order to continue its work in secret? Perhaps most telling are the words attributed to one Templar knight on the day of the mass arrests. As royal darts battered down the doors of the Paris temple, he is said to have smiled and declared, "Your victory is but air. What is built in spirit cannot be destroyed by fire and sword." The flames that consumed Jacques de Molay did not mark an end, but a beginning, the transformation of the Knights Templar from a public institution to something far more elusive and enduring. As de Molay's ashes cooled on that spring day in 1314, the true legacy of the Templars was just taking root, preparing to grow in the shadows for centuries to come.
The night before the mass arrests in France, a convoy of covered wagons departed the Templar headquarters in Paris. According to contemporary accounts, they carried, quote, certain coffers and chests of great weight, unquote. Their destination and contents remain one of history's most enduring mysteries. Did they carry the accumulated treasure of 2 centuries, gold, relics, and precious documents, or something of even greater value? When King Philip's men breached the Paris temple the following morning, they found empty treasury vaults. The royal inventories record only, quote, common vessels of tin and iron tools, unquote. Of the legendary Templar wealth, there was no trace. The king, already deeply indebted to the order, had been outmaneuvered. But how had the Templars known of the impending arrests, planned in such secrecy? A document discovered in the French National Archives in 1956 provides a tantalizing clue. An Italian merchant in France wrote to his partners weeks before the arrests, warning them to withdraw any assets from Templar banks. The knowledge of the coming persecution had traveled through commercial networks tied to the Templars, allowing many knights to escape with their knowledge and resources intact. The fate of the Templar fleet presents another compelling thread in this tapestry of survival. The order maintained a substantial naval presence, particularly at La Rochelle on France's Atlantic coast. Records indicate at least 18 ships were anchored there in September 1307. By October 14th, the day after the arrests, royal officials found the harbor empty. 18 ships, their crews, and whatever cargo they carried had vanished overnight. Some historians suggest these ships may have sailed to Scotland, where Robert the Bruce, himself excommunicated by the Pope, had every reason to welcome skilled warriors with resources and a grudge against the French king and English crown. The timing is certainly suspicious. Just 7 months after the Templar arrests, Bruce's outnumbered forces achieved a stunning victory at the Battle of Bannockburn. Scottish legends claim Templar knights fought among them, bringing a turning tide to the battle. Others point to Portugal, where King Denis negotiated with the Pope to transform the Templars into a new order, the Knights of Christ, preserving their personnel, properties, and privileges under a different name. The distinctive red cross of the Templars remained on their sails, albeit slightly modified. These were the same ships that, a century later, would carry explorers like Henry the Navigator and Vasco da Gama to new worlds. The Templar maritime knowledge, preserved within this reborn order, helped launch the Age of Exploration. But perhaps the most intriguing evidence of Templar survival comes from Switzerland. In the months following the arrests, the remote Alpine valleys saw an influx of skilled stoneworkers, military engineers, and bankers, precisely the professions dominated by the Templars. Shortly thereafter, the legend of William Tell emerges, with themes of resistance to tyranny. Within decades, Switzerland develops a reputation for banking secrecy, military prowess, and fierce independence. By 1339, the Swiss defeat Habsburg forces at the Battle of Laupen, using unusual battle tactics reminiscent of Templar methods. The Swiss connection is further strengthened by curious architectural details found in churches built after the Templar dissolution. The church at Mostert contains wall paintings with distinct Templar symbolism. Remote Alpine chapels feature octagonal designs, a Templar hallmark reflecting the eight-sided dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Most telling are the hidden chambers found beneath several Swiss churches, accessible only through concealed entrances and containing spaces suitable for clandestine gatherings. Across Europe, we find threads of evidence suggesting not a scattered band of fugitives, but an organized network operating in the shadows. Templar knowledge of banking continued in new forms. Their architectural expertise manifested in buildings with peculiar features, and their vast archive of knowledge preserved through covert means. The survival of Templar knowledge is perhaps most evident in the mysterious appearance of advanced banking methods throughout Europe following their suppression. The letters of credit, complex accounting systems, and international banking frameworks pioneered by the Templars didn't disappear with them. They simply re-emerged under different auspices. Banking families in Florence, like the Bardi and Peruzzi, suddenly implemented sophisticated financial techniques previously known only to the Templar order. Then there are the maps. The sudden appearance of startlingly accurate navigational charts in the decades following the Templar suppression has long puzzled historians. The Dulcert Portolan of 1339 and the Catalan Atlas of 1375 display navigational knowledge seemingly impossible for their time. Did these represent Templar maritime secrets, carefully preserved and selectively shared? The story of a German knight named Heinrich von Montfort offers a revealing glimpse into how individual Templars might have survived. Court records from Vienna in 1313 mention him as a former knight of the dissolved order who had established himself as a respected merchant with curious connections to mines in the Tyrol. He maintained correspondence with former Templars across several countries, ostensibly for trade. His seal, however, incorporated subtle Templar symbolism within its seemingly conventional design. Physical evidence of Templar survival emerges in unexpected places. In 1955, renovations at Roslin Chapel in Scotland revealed a hidden chamber containing Templar regalia dating from the 1300s, well after their supposed extinction. In the French village of Dôme, prison cells that once held captured Templars contain elaborate carvings and symbols that would later appear in Masonic iconography, suggesting a continuity of esoteric knowledge. Perhaps most compelling is the persistence of the distinctive Templar battle cross appearing on medieval buildings constructed decades after the order's dissolution. These weren't merely decorative, they often marked properties along old Templar routes or near sites of significance to the order. Were they signals to those who knew how to read them? A parallel language for a shadow organization? The pattern that emerges is not of an order that was destroyed, but one that adapted, shedding its visible structure while preserving its essence. The Knight Templars, with their international network, financial resources, and specialized knowledge, appear to have implemented a contingency plan long prepared for the day persecution came. Their survival was not merely physical, but institutional, a transformation from a public body to a secret brotherhood that would continue to shape European history from behind the veil. As one French chronicler wrote in 1328, "The Templars are gone from sight, yet their hand remains upon the tiller of many ships." The shadow of their survival would soon give birth to new forms, new brotherhoods, and new mysteries that persist to this day.
In the century following the Templar suppression, Europe witnessed the emergence of mysterious brotherhoods and guilds that bore striking similarities to the vanished order. These organizations appeared almost simultaneously across different regions, displaying common elements of secrecy, ritual, and symbolism that suggest a shared origin. Among the first were the Brethren of the Common Life, founded in the Netherlands around 1380. Ostensibly a religious community, their internal structure mimicked the Templar hierarchy, with inner and outer circles of initiation. They emphasized education, preserved ancient manuscripts, and maintained an international network of houses. Many of Europe's great minds passed through their schools, including Nicholas of Cusa and Erasmus of Rotterdam. Though appearing pious and conventional to outside observers, their private writings reveal interests in sacred geometry, esoteric Christianity, and ancient wisdom traditions, all subjects close to Templar concerns. In Germany, the Brotherhood of the Hanse emerged as a powerful mercantile league controlling Baltic and North Sea trade. While publicly focused on commerce, their internal records reveal ritualistic elements, including recognition signs and oaths remarkably similar to those later found in Freemasonry. Their meeting halls featured distinctive architectural elements once common in Templar commanderies, particularly the use of specific proportions and acoustic designs. More explicit connections appear in Scotland, where the St. Clair family, long associated with the Templars, established a stonemasons guild at Rosslyn in the mid-1400s. Rosslyn Chapel, their masterwork, completed around 1486, contains an extraordinary fusion of symbols. Christian imagery intermingled with pagan and Templar motifs, Islamic decorative patterns, and Native American plants carved before Columbus's voyage. The building itself seems designed as a three-dimensional book, preserving knowledge in stone when possessing certain manuscripts could prove dangerous. The St. Clairs were not merely Scottish nobles, but held the hereditary title of Grand Master of the Masons of Scotland. This connection between a family with Templar ties and the early Masonic tradition is difficult to dismiss as coincidence, especially when Templar symbols appear throughout their constructions. In Switzerland, the emergence of the Bauhütten, lodges of stonemasons with elaborate initiation ceremonies, coincides with the regions where Templar refugees reportedly settled. These lodges maintained unusual degrees of secrecy for mere craft guilds, with recognition signs, special handshakes, and oaths of fidelity. Their members traveled widely, working on cathedrals across Europe, potentially serving as messengers and agents of a wider network. The Swiss Bauhütten displayed another telling characteristic. They possessed advanced architectural knowledge seemingly derived from Middle Eastern sources, precisely the kind of knowledge the Templars had acquired during their time in the Holy Land. Their geometrical methods and engineering solutions show clear parallels to techniques used in Templar constructions a century earlier. Perhaps most significant is the sudden appearance of Rosicrucian brotherhoods in the early 1600s. The Rosicrucian manifestos, published between 1614 and 1616, describe a secret brotherhood founded by a mythical figure named Christian Rosencreuz, who had traveled in the Holy Land and returned with esoteric wisdom. The parallels to the Templar origin story are unmistakable. Moreover, the Rosicrucian symbol of a rose upon a cross bears striking similarity to certain Templar seals combining these same elements. Where the Rosicrucian movement emerged publicly, it claimed to have existed in secret for centuries, precisely the period since the Templar suppression. Their emphasis on alchemy, sacred geometry, and Hermetic philosophy aligned perfectly with subjects the Templars had encountered through their contact with Islamic and Jewish scholars in Jerusalem. The Rosicrucian structure of invisible brothers working behind the scenes to guide society mirrors what a clandestine Templar organization might have evolved into. The connection between these emerging brotherhoods and the vanished Templars becomes more explicit in the figure of Johann Valentin Andreae, widely believed to be the author of the Rosicrucian manifestos. His family coat of arms featured the same St. Andrew's cross used by Templar naval vessels. His grandfather served as chancellor to the Duke of Württemberg, whose family had provided refuge to Templars during the suppression. Andrea's writings contain coded references to the Brothers of the Red Cross, who had preserved ancient wisdom through times of darkness. By the mid-1600s, these various streams, the stonemasons' guilds, the Rosicrucians, and other brotherhoods, began to converge into what would eventually become known as Freemasonry. The first documented initiation of a non-operative Mason, someone not actually in the building trade, occurred in 1641 in Scotland, with Sir Robert Moray joining a lodge in Edinburgh. Moray's family had connections to the St. Clairs and properties once held by the Templars.
When Elias Ashmole, the celebrated English antiquarian, was initiated into a Masonic lodge in 1646, he recorded in his diary that he was joining an organization that hath harbored certain mysteries since time immemorial. Ashmole's private papers reveal his belief that Freemasonry preserved elements of Templar tradition, particularly their esoteric interpretations of biblical architecture and sacred geometry. The early Masonic constitutions, particularly the Cook manuscript, c. 1450, and the Grand Lodge No. 1 manuscript, 1583, contain curious references to knights who became builders and warriors who laid down swords to take up the tools of geometry. These oblique statements take on new significance when viewed through the lens of Templar transformation. When formal Freemasonry emerged publicly in London in 1717 with the establishment of the Grand Lodge, many of its rituals centered around the building of Solomon's Temple, the very site in Jerusalem where the Templars had established their headquarters and derived their name. The Masonic degrees included elements of ritual death and rebirth, secret recognition signals, and oaths of secrecy that parallel what we know of Templar initiation ceremonies. The thread connecting these organizations is not merely symbolic, but often physical. Records show properties passing from Templar ownership to these emerging brotherhoods through intermediary families. In France, several early Masonic lodges met in buildings formerly held by the Templars. In Scotland, many early lodge locations correspond to known Templar sites. The persistence of certain family names, Sinclair, Montgomery, Stewart, and others with documented Templar connections in the leadership of these new organizations suggests bloodline continuity as well. Even more telling is the appearance of distinctly Templar symbols within these new brotherhoods. The skull and crossbones, the severed head, reminiscent of the alleged Baphomet worship, the black and white checkered floor, the two riders on a single horse, all iconic Templar imagery emerge as central symbols in Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism. The transmission seems to have been carefully orchestrated, with each generation of initiates receiving only portions of the whole. As one 17th century Rosicrucian text cryptically states, "The truth is not given all at once, but in measures, lest it overwhelm and be lost. What was divided shall be reunited in time." By the early 18th century, explicit Templar revival appears in Freemasonry. In 1737, Chevalier Ramsay, a Scottish Jacobite exile in France, delivered his famous oration declaring that Freemasonry descended directly from the crusading orders, particularly the Knights Templar. This launched a wave of Templar degrees within European Masonry, culminating in orders like the Strict Observance, which claimed direct succession from the medieval Templars. Whether these later organizations truly maintained an unbroken lineage to the original Templars remains debated. What appears more certain is that the secret knowledge, symbols, and organizational methods of the Templars survived their persecution, flowing like an underground river through various channels before re-emerging in new forms. The legacy of the warrior monks had transformed, adapting to a world where power operated increasingly through commerce, knowledge, and hidden influence rather than overt military might. As we trace these connections across centuries, a pattern emerges, not of complete invention, more perfect preservation, but of an organic evolution. The Templar flame, rather than being extinguished in 1314, appears to have ignited numerous smaller fires that would continue to illuminate the hidden side of Western history for centuries to come.
London, 1717. 4 lodges of accepted or speculative Masons gather at the Goose and Gridiron Ale House to form the first Grand Lodge. This moment marks the public emergence of modern Freemasonry, an institution that would rapidly spread across Europe and eventually the world. Yet behind this seemingly new organization lay centuries of tradition and, many believe, the hidden hand of Templar survival. The timing is difficult to dismiss as mere coincidence. The early 18th century witnessed an extraordinary revival of interest in the Templars precisely as Freemasonry emerged from the shadows into public life. This was no simple case of romantic fascination with a long-dead order. The connections were explicit, intentional, and woven deeply into Masonic ritual and symbolism. Consider the curious case of Andrew Michael Ramsay, a Scottish exile living in France. In 1737, Ramsay delivered an oration to French Freemasons that electrified European intellectual circles. In this speech, he explicitly claimed that Freemasonry descended from the crusading knights, particularly the Templars, who had preserved ancient wisdom from the Holy Land. This Ramsay's oration launched what historians call the Scottish thesis, the idea that Freemasonry represented the continuation of Templar traditions preserved in Scotland after the order's suppression. Ramsay was no marginal figure. He served as tutor to the Stuart claimant to the British throne and moved in the highest circles of French society. His claims were taken seriously by his contemporaries, many of whom possessed family histories intertwined with both the Templars and early Masonic lodges. His oration did not create the Templar-Masonic connection from nothing. Rather, it made public what had been whispered in certain circles for generations. Following Ramsay's declaration, a proliferation of higher degrees appeared within European Masonry, many explicitly Templar in nature. The most significant was the Rite of Strict Observance, founded by Baron von Hund around 1751. Von Hund claimed to have been initiated by unknown superiors, mysterious figures who revealed to him that Freemasonry was created to be the vehicle for Templar survival and eventual restoration. The strict observance spread rapidly across continental Europe, attracting nobility and intellectuals with its claim of direct Templar succession. Its rituals reconstructed Templar initiation ceremonies based on what von Hund claimed were secret documents preserved since the 14th century. Members took knightly names and traced their lineage to specific Templar predecessors. Remarkably, many of the nobles who joined could indeed trace ancestral connections to Templar knights. Von Hund's story contained elements that historians can verify. He described being initiated in Paris by Lord Kilmarnock, a Jacobite Scot who did indeed visit Paris when von Hund claimed to have met him. The unknown superiors he referenced match descriptions of the invisible college mentioned in Rosicrucian texts from the previous century. Most tellingly, the strict observance possessed Templar relics of authenticated age and provenance, including seals and documents dating to the 14th century. This Templar revival within Masonry was not limited to the continent. In Britain, the Royal Order of Scotland, dating at least to the 1730s, preserved rituals connecting Robert the Bruce, Bannockburn, and the Templars. Their ceremonies speak of knights who came from the east to the west, bringing ancient wisdom that had to be preserved in coded form. The very structure of their meetings, with guards posted at doors and specific seating arrangements, mirrors Templar chapter meetings, as described in medieval documents. In 1791, a remarkable archaeological discovery added fuel to this fire of speculation. During renovations of the old Templar headquarters in Paris, workers uncovered stone coffers containing medals bearing Templar crosses alongside distinctly Masonic symbols. Carbon dating later confirmed these artifacts originated in the late 13th century, after the Templar suppression but before the documented emergence of speculative Freemasonry. This physical evidence suggested a literal underground preservation of Templar symbols during the intervening period. The rituals themselves provide the most compelling evidence of Templar DNA within Freemasonry. The Master Mason degree centers around the murder of Hiram Abiff, architect of Solomon's Temple, and the candidate's symbolic death and resurrection.
This parallels accounts of Templar initiation ceremonies, where knights underwent ritual death to their old life. Both traditions emphasize the Temple of Solomon, the Templars deriving their very name from it, and Freemasons building their central mythology around its construction.
The Masonic emphasis on Solomon's Temple might seem natural for a fraternity evolved from stonemasons, but certain details defy this simple explanation. Masonic ritual preserves precise measurements and architectural features of the temple that do not appear in biblical texts, but do match esoteric traditions the Templars encountered in Jerusalem through their contact with Jewish and Muslim scholars. These include the placement of the pillars Jachin and Boaz, the configuration of chambers, and the significance of the middle chamber, details found in Kabbalistic and Sufi interpretations rather than standard Christian understanding. Certain Masonic passwords and phrases appear to be corrupted forms of Arabic or Hebrew terms that Templars would have encountered in the East. The famous Masonic phrase, Mahabun, bears no relation to English or Latin, but closely resembles the Arabic Mahabun, meaning, "What is this building?" Such linguistic fossils suggest transmission through an organization with Eastern experience, precisely what the Templars possessed. The Masonic tracing boards, symbolic floor drawings used in rituals, contain geometric patterns virtually identical to designs found in Templar churches across Europe. These include the distinctive Seal of Solomon pattern at Dome in France, where imprisoned Templars carved symbols into their cell walls. The same geometric configurations appear in later Masonic lodges, preserved not merely as decorative elements, but as central to ritual work. Beyond ritual parallels, early Freemasonry exhibited organizational characteristics that mirrored the Templars. Both maintained international networks with local chapters answering to central authorities. Both developed sophisticated systems of recognition that allowed members to identify one another across language barriers. Both emphasized charitable works alongside esoteric study. Both operated banking systems for members. Early Masonic lodges often functioned as mutual aid societies with financial functions reminiscent of Templar banking practices. The geographical spread of early Masonic lodges presents another suggestive pattern. The first documented lodges appear precisely in regions associated with Templar refuge, Scotland, Switzerland, and parts of Germany. When mapped against known Templar properties, the overlap is remarkable. In France, many early lodges met in buildings that had once been Templar commanderies, preserving a physical continuity of sacred space. Critics argue that 18th century Freemasons simply appropriated Templar mythology to lend themselves aristocratic glamour and ancient lineage. Yet this explanation fails to account for the presence of Templar symbols in Masonic contexts before the public Templar revival. Tombstones of 17th century Freemasons display combined Masonic and Templar imagery decades before Ramsay's oration made the connection explicit. Family papers of early Scottish Masonic families contain private references to Templar heritage long before such claims became fashionable. The Neo-Templar degrees that flourished within 18th century Freemasonry were not invented wholesale, but codified elements that had existed in more scattered form. When the Chevalier Bienfaisant de la Cité Sainte reformed the strict observance in the 1770s, they claimed to be correcting errors that had crept into transmission rather than creating something new. Their revised rituals actually simplified previous practices, suggesting refinement of existing tradition rather than elaborate invention. Perhaps most compelling is the existence of what historians call recognition codes embedded in early Masonic documents. These are passages that appear innocuous to outsiders, but contain information meaningful only to those with specific prior knowledge. When analyzed with keys derived from Templar documents, certain passages in early Masonic constitutions yield additional layers of meaning, including references to events and places significant in Templar history. The picture that emerges is not of a direct, unbroken organizational continuity, but of a transmission of essence, core principles, symbols, and practices preserved through various channels before converging in 18th century Freemasonry. The Templar presence within Masonry appears less a romantic invention and more the culmination of a long, complex process of cultural preservation through periods of necessity and danger. As one French Masonic historian wrote in 1789, "The temple has been destroyed, but the stones were preserved, marked and reassembled in a new form. The container changed while the essence remained." Whether by design or organic evolution, the spiritual architecture of the Templars found new expression in the lodges of Freemasonry, preserving their legacy in a form that could survive in a changed world.
Bavaria, May 1st, 1776. In the university town of Ingolstadt, a professor of canon law named Adam Weishaupt establishes a secret society called the Order of the Illuminati. Its stated aims include opposition to superstition, religious influence over public life, and abuses of state power. Within a decade, this organization will infiltrate Masonic lodges throughout Europe, attract hundreds of influential members, and then be suppressed as a revolutionary threat to monarchical order. The birth of the Illuminati marks a crucial evolution in the story of secret societies and in how the Templar legacy would be interpreted for centuries to come. Unlike earlier brotherhoods that looked backward to ancient wisdom, Weishaupt's creation was explicitly forward-looking, aimed at reshaping society according to Enlightenment principles. Yet even this revolutionary organization would find itself drawn into the Templar current. The connection came through Baron von Kmigi, who joined the Illuminati in 1780 and rapidly became Weishaupt's chief lieutenant. Von Kmigi was already a high-ranking Freemason with extensive knowledge of the Templar-oriented higher degrees. Under his influence, the Illuminati adopted a structure modeled partly on the strict observance, with degrees of initiation and ritualistic elements that echoed both Masonic and Templar traditions. The Illuminati's strategy of working through Masonic lodges created a fascinating historical irony. Here was a modern, rationalist organization operating within a fraternity that preserved elements of medieval mysticism, using structures ultimately derived from the warrior monks of the Crusades to advance an Enlightenment agenda. This strange synthesis would forever alter how the Templar legacy was perceived. When Bavarian authorities suppressed the Illuminati in 1786, seizing their documents and publishing them as warnings against revolutionary subversion, they unintentionally planted the seeds of modern conspiracy theories. The exposed papers revealed sophisticated methods of infiltration and influence, leading many to believe the organization had not been destroyed, but had simply gone deeper underground. When the French Revolution erupted just 3 years later, rumors spread that both the Illuminati and Templar-influenced Masonic lodges had engineered the upheaval. The Abbé Augustin Barruel, a French Jesuit writing in exile after the Revolution, produced a sensational multi-volume work claiming that the entire revolutionary cataclysm had been orchestrated by a coalition of secret societies, with the Illuminati as their spearhead and Templar revenge as their underlying motivation. According to Barruel, the execution of Louis XVI in 1793 represented the fulfillment of Jacques de Molay's curse on the French monarchy carried out by his spiritual descendants nearly 500 years later. Barruel's work, Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism, found an eager audience across Europe and America. It permanently linked the concepts of Templars, Freemasons, Illuminati, and revolutionary conspiracy in the public imagination.
Whether his claims had any factual basis became almost irrelevant. The narrative itself took on a life of its own, evolving and adapting to new historical circumstances. As Europe entered the 19th century, this fusion of Templar mythology with contemporary politics produced new organizations that claimed the Templar mantle for various purposes. In France, Bernard Raymond Fabre-Palaprat established the Ordre du Temple in 1804, claiming to possess the Charter of l'Arminius, a document allegedly showing an unbroken line of Templar Grand Masters since Jacques de Molay. Napoleon's police initially tolerated this Neo-Templar revival, seeing it as harmless historical romanticism. Yet the political potential of the Templar myth soon reasserted itself. After Napoleon's fall, legitimist forces in France embraced Neo-Templar organizations as vehicles for restoring traditional authority. Simultaneously, in places like Poland and Hungary, similar groups took on revolutionary characteristics, seeing in the Templars a model for resistance against imperial powers. The Templar legacy proved remarkably adaptable, capable of supporting both conservative and revolutionary interpretations. The 19th century witnessed an explosion of esoteric societies, many incorporating Templar elements into increasingly elaborate synthetic traditions. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, founded in London in 1888, wove Templar symbolism into its system of ceremonial magic. The Ordo Templi Orientis, established around 1895, claimed to possess the secret sexual mysteries allegedly practiced by the historical Templars. The Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, restricted to Master Masons, studied Templar history as part of its curriculum on esoteric Christianity. This period also saw the emergence of what we might call the Templar conspiracy worldview, the idea that the suppressed knights had not merely survived, but had evolved into a hidden force guiding world events. This narrative gained particular traction in the context of banking and finance, areas where the historical Templars had indeed been innovators. As international banking developed in the 19th century, rumors spread that financial dynasties like the Rothschilds were fronts for Templar wealth preserved since the 14th century. The construction of the Statue of Liberty in 1886 sparked another wave of speculation. Its designer, Frederick Auguste Bartholdi, was a Freemason, and some claimed the statue's measurements incorporated Templar sacred geometry. The fact that its copper sheathing was manufactured by the French copper monopoly Secretant, a company with historical connections to properties once held by the Templars, added fuel to these theories. By the early 20th century, the Templar Illuminati narrative had expanded to encompass virtually every significant historical event. World War I was interpreted by some as the culmination of centuries-old conflicts between Templar-influenced secret societies and the remnants of monarchical powers descended from Philip the Fair. The Russian Revolution was seen as the latest manifestation of the same hidden struggle, with both Bolsheviks and their opponents claiming to detect the influence of occult brotherhoods behind the scenes.
The interwar period saw these ideas take darker forms. In France, authors like Nesta Webster popularized the notion that a Judeo-Masonic conspiracy with Templar origins controlled international finance and fomented revolution. In Germany, fringe occultists within the Nazi movement became obsessed with the Holy Grail and other relics allegedly guarded by the Templars. Organizations like the Thule Society combined Templar mythology with racial theories to create a toxic ideological brew. After World War II, the Templar conspiracy narrative underwent yet another transformation. As the Cold War divided the world into competing blocs, some theorists claimed this visible conflict masked a deeper unity of purpose among elites on both sides. According to this view, the apparent East-West division concealed a continuation of ancient plans laid by Templar-derived societies, now operating through international organizations, financial institutions, and corporate structures. The formation of the European Union sparked fresh speculation. The flag of the EU, a circle of 12 golden stars on a blue background, was designed by Paul Levy, a Belgian Jew who had survived the Holocaust. Some conspiracy theorists claimed the design had been influenced by Marian symbolism, the crown of stars of the Virgin Mary, due to Levy's gratitude to a Catholic family who had hidden him during the war. Others saw in it references to the 12 Knights of the original Templar founding, or the zodiacal symbolism important in Templar esotericism. In 1982, the publication of The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail by Michael Bajan, Richard Lee, and Henry Lincoln introduced millions to an elaborate theory connecting the Templars to the Priory of Sion, Merovingian bloodlines, and the supposed descendants of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. Though later revealed to be based on forged documents planted by Pierre Plantard, a French esotericist with neo-fascist connections in his youth, the book's core narrative proved remarkably resilient, eventually inspiring Dan Brown's best-selling novel, The Da Vinci Code, in 2003. The digital age has amplified these narratives exponentially. Online communities dedicated to Templar conspiracy theories connect adherents across the globe, sharing interpretations of current events through the lens of centuries-old hidden conflicts. Financial crises, terrorist attacks, pandemic responses, and technological developments are all absorbed into an ever-expanding narrative of Templar Illuminati machinations. What began as the survival strategy of a persecuted medieval order has evolved into perhaps the most persistent and adaptable conspiracy theory in Western culture. The Templar Illuminati narrative functions as a kind of meta-myth, capable of incorporating virtually any historical development into its framework. It offers the seductive promise of explanatory simplicity, the complex chaos of history reduced to the machinations of identifiable actors with clear motivations stretching back to 1314. The reality of Templar influence on subsequent history is undoubtedly more nuanced than either mainstream dismissal or conspiracy maximalism would suggest. Their banking innovations, architectural knowledge, navigational expertise, and organizational methods did survive their suppression, filtering into European culture through various channels. Their dramatic fall and the mysteries surrounding their treasure and knowledge did inspire subsequent secret societies, some of which preserved elements of their traditions. Yet the gap between this historical influence and the all-encompassing conspiracy narratives of modern times reveals something important about human psychology and our need for order in a chaotic world. Perhaps the most significant legacy of the Templars is not their direct impact on history, but how their story has functioned as a kind of template upon which each generation projects its hopes, fears, and suspicions about power and its operation in the world. As a medieval monk wrote shortly after the Templar suppression, "When great powers fall mysteriously, they cast long shadows, and in these shadows men will forever see moving the shapes of their own desires and dreads. The shadow of the Templars has proven long indeed."
Stretching from the flames of Jacques de Malay's pyre to the digital forums of the 21st century.
Rome, October 25, 2007. In a quiet ceremony at the Vatican Secret Archives, a remarkable document is displayed publicly for the first time, the Chinon Parchment. Discovered by medieval historian Barbara Frail in 2001, this 700-year-old record reveals that Pope Clement V secretly absolved the Templar leaders of heresy charges in 1308, even as he publicly moved toward dissolving the order under pressure from King Philip of France. The Vatican's decision to release this document after 7 centuries of obscurity raises profound questions. Why was such a significant historical record lost within the archives for so long? What other Templar secrets might still lie hidden in the Vatican's labyrinthine collections? And perhaps most intriguingly, what does the Catholic Church know about the true fate of the Knights Templar? The relationship between the Templars and the Vatican was always complex. Founded as the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, the order answered directly to the Pope, bypassing local church authorities. This special status made them valuable papal allies, but also created tensions within the church hierarchy. When King Philip moved against them, Pope Clement found himself caught between defending an order under his protection and accommodating the demands of the French monarchy on which he depended. The Chinon parchment reveals Clement's attempted compromise, privately absolving the Templar leadership while publicly allowing the suppression to proceed. This duplicitous approach suggests the Pope may have been playing a deeper game than previously recognized. Was he simply trying to balance competing pressures, or was he providing theological cover for the order's survival in a new form? The Vatican's long silence about this document is so intriguing that it fundamentally alters our understanding of the Templar suppression. The traditional narrative portrays the Church as accepting the charges of heresy and participating in the order's destruction. The reality appears more nuanced. A pope who publicly condemned the order while secretly affirming its orthodoxy, potentially enabling its continuation under different auspices. The Vatican's archives contain countless other Templar documents that remain unavailable to researchers. According to limited inventories released to scholars, these include financial records, property transfers, and correspondence between the Pope and Templar preceptories in the critical period between the arrests in 1307 and the order's official dissolution in 1312. What secrets might these documents contain about the fate of Templar wealth, knowledge, and personnel? Historical records indicate that Pope Clement issued secret instructions to certain bishops regarding Templar refugees in the aftermath of the suppression. The content of these instructions remain unknown, but their existence suggests an organized ecclesiastical response to the crisis. Were these simply humanitarian measures to protect innocent knights? Or did they constitute a structured plan for preserving aspects of the order? The Church's handling of Templar properties presents another puzzle. While many Templar holdings were supposedly transferred to the Knights Hospitaller, financial records showed discrepancies between the documented wealth of the order and what actually changed hands. In Portugal, Spain, and parts of Germany, properties nominally transferred to the Hospitallers appeared to have remained under the management of the same individuals who had administered them as Templars, merely operating under new titles. Perhaps most significant is the Vatican's ambiguous relationship with subsequent organizations claiming Templar heritage. When Freemasonry emerged in the early 17th century, with rituals and symbols drawing heavily on Templar traditions, the Church's response was strikingly disproportionate. Pope Clement XII's 1738 bull, In Eminente Apostolatus, excommunicated Freemasons with language nearly identical to that used against the Templars 4 centuries earlier.
This extreme reaction seems puzzling if Freemasonry was merely a new fraternal organization with no authentic connection to the Templars. If, however, the Vatican recognized in Freemasonry the reemergence of an order it had officially dissolved while privately preserving, the vehemence becomes more comprehensible. The Church was not attacking something new, but responding to the public reappearance of something it had helped to conceal. The Vatican's relationship with Neo-Templar orders that emerged in the 19th century reveals similar contradictions. Some were condemned outright, while others received tacit tolerance or even quiet support from individual church officials. The Order of Christ in Portugal, the direct institutional descendant of the Portuguese Templars, maintained a complex relationship with Rome, neither fully embraced nor definitively rejected. Vatican silence extends to physical artifacts as well as documents. The Church possesses numerous relics, ritual objects, and artwork surrendered by the Templars during their suppression. Many remain in Vatican collections, uncatalogued and unavailable for scholarly examination. Those that have been studied often bear inscriptions or symbols that suggest esoteric interpretations of Christianity aligned with the charges made against the order. Particularly intriguing are the references in Vatican financial records to a mysterious treasury account designated Pro Recuperanda Terra Santa for the recovery of the Holy Land that continued to show activity long after the Crusades had ended. Some historians suggest this may have been a mechanism for managing Templar assets held in trust by the Church, possibly intended for the order's eventual restoration or transformation. The Vatican's modern stance toward Templar history reflects this centuries-old ambivalence. Official Church historians acknowledge the Templars' contributions and the injustice of their suppression, yet remain silent on questions of their esoteric practices or potential survival. When pressed on these matters, Vatican representatives typically offer minimal responses, neither confirming nor emphatically denying the more contentious aspects of Templar history.
In 1994, the Vatican marked the 700th anniversary of Jacques de Molay's death with a special Mass. During this ceremony, a high-ranking cardinal made the cryptic statement that the truth of the Templars resides not in their destruction, but in their transformation. This tantalizing comment received no official elaboration, leaving scholars to speculate about its implications. The Church's approach to Templar-related sites presents similar contradictions. Many Templar churches remain active Catholic parishes, often preserving unusual architectural features or symbols at odds with standard Catholic iconography. When renovations or archaeological investigations at these sites uncover evidence potentially supporting Templar unorthodoxy, access is frequently restricted or findings left unpublished. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Vatican's relationship with the Templar legacy is what might be called the silence about the silence, the reluctance of Church officials to explain why certain aspects of Templar history remain off-limits to researchers. This meta-silence suggests not just the protection of specific secrets, but a broader policy of deliberate ambiguity, maintaining a space where neither confirmation nor denial fully resolves the question surrounding the order's fate. Some Vatican insiders have hinted that this approach serves a theological purpose. By neither fully endorsing nor completely rejecting the esoteric aspects of the Templar tradition, the Church maintains a relationship with mystical currents that, while not part of mainstream Catholicism, have periodically revitalized its spiritual tradition. The Templars, in this view, represent an alternative orthodoxy, technically within the bounds of Catholic theology, but exploring its mystical frontiers. The case of Father Saunier of Rennes-le-Château illustrates this dynamic. This obscure parish priest suddenly displayed inexplicable wealth in the 1990s while renovating his church with imagery connecting to Templar and Masonic symbolism. When church authorities investigated, their findings were sealed in the Vatican archives rather than made public. Saunier was privately disciplined but allowed to continue his renovations, suggesting the Church recognized something in his activities that required containment rather than outright suppression. Recent statements by Vatican officials have sometimes approached acknowledgement of a more complex history than the official narrative allows. In a 2018 interview, a senior archivist referred to the Templars as formally dissolved but spiritually perpetuated through channels known to the Holy See. When pressed for clarification, the Vatican press office described the comment as reflecting historical theories rather than institutional knowledge. The Vatican's ambiguous stance extends to modern organizations claiming Templar heritage. Some receive quiet acknowledgement through unofficial channels, while others face active discouragement. This selective response suggests the Church distinguishes between those it recognizes as authentic heirs to some aspect of the Templar tradition and those it views as mere appropriators of Templar symbolism. What emerges from this pattern of strategic silence
partial disclosure, and calculated ambiguity is the possibility that the Vatican has maintained a continuous awareness of Templar survival in some form. Rather than a simple case of suppression followed by extinction, the historical record suggests a more nuanced reality, an order officially dissolved but unofficially permitted to transform and continue under various guises, with the Church maintaining a carefully measured distance that neither fully embraces nor definitively rejects this shadow legacy. As a medieval document attributed to a papal advisor cryptically states, what the Church appears to destroy with one hand, it may preserve with the other. For some vessels, though cracked, still contain essences too valuable to spill entirely. The Vatican's centuries of silence regarding the true fate of the Templars may constitute not an absence of knowledge, but the most profound statement of all, a silence that speaks volumes to those who understand how to listen. The legacy of the Templars thus remains not merely a historical question, but an ongoing enigma, sustained in part by the very institution that officially terminated their existence. In the Vatican's strategic silence may lie the most compelling evidence that the flame kindled by 9 knights in Jerusalem 9 centuries ago continues to burn, tended by hands both seen and unseen through the corridors of history.
Paris, May 15, 1956. A modest literary sensation unfolds as a French bookseller named Gerard de Side publishes Les Templiers sont parmi nous. The Templars are among us. The book becomes an unexpected bestseller, capturing the imagination of post-war Europe with its tantalizing suggestion that the medieval order never truly vanished, but continues to exert hidden influence in the modern world. This publication marks not the beginning, but the crystallization of the Templars' transformation from historical figures to cultural icons of enduring power. The Knights Templar have achieved a kind of immortality few historical entities can claim. They have transcended their medieval origins to become archetypes in the collective consciousness, symbols of lost glory, keepers of ancient wisdom, guardians of sacred treasures, and, in darker interpretations, hidden puppet masters behind world events. Through literature, film, television, video games, and the digital wilderness of internet forums, the Templars have been continuously reborn, each incarnation reflecting the preoccupations and anxieties of its era. The modern cultural journey of the Templars can be traced to the Romantic period, when writers like Sir Walter Scott reimagined the medieval world for contemporary audiences. Scott's 1820 novel Ivanhoe introduced the Templars to popular literature, portraying them as corrupted from their noble origins, powerful, sinister, and possessing esoteric knowledge beyond ordinary Christianity. This characterization, though historically questionable, proved irresistible to the Romantic imagination, establishing a template that would influence depictions for centuries to come. By the late 19th century, the Templars had become fixtures in esoteric fiction. French authors like Josephine Péladan and Jules Doinel wove them into elaborate occult narratives connecting the order to the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, and various mystical bloodlines. These works presented the Templars not as extinct, but as an underground current flowing through history, periodically surfacing through front organizations or initiated individuals. Such portrayals reflected the fin de siècle fascination with spiritual alternatives to mainstream religion and the search for hidden knowledge in an increasingly rationalistic world. The early 20th century saw this literary tradition continue in works like Maurice Leblanc's Arsène Lupin stories, where the gentleman thief discovers Templar treasures hidden beneath the French countryside. These tales popularized what would become a standard element of Templar mythology, the notion of vast wealth concealed in elaborate hiding places, waiting to be discovered by those clever enough to decipher ancient clues. This motif would later find its ultimate expression in contemporary thrillers like Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. The emergence of cinema provided a new medium for Templar imagery. Cecil B. DeMille's 1935 epic, The Crusades, offered audiences their first major visual representation of the warrior monks, establishing their distinctive white mantles with red crosses as powerful symbols recognizable even to those with no historical knowledge of the order. Though the Templars played a relatively minor role in this film, their striking appearance made a lasting impression, ensuring they would return to the screen repeatedly in subsequent decades. In the post-World War II period, the Templars found themselves increasingly connected to conspiracy narratives. The Cold War created fertile ground for theories about hidden forces controlling world events from behind the scenes. The international nature of the historical Templar order, their financial innovations, and their mysterious disappearance made them perfect candidates for retroactive insertion into grand conspiracy frameworks. Books like The Templars Are Among Us suggested the Knights had survived to become the hidden hand guiding banking systems, political movements, and even the formation of nation-states. This conspiratorial interpretation gained momentum with the 1982 publication of The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail by Michael Bagent, Richard Lee, and Henry Lincoln. Though later revealed to be based largely on forged documents and questionable historical interpretations, this work became a publishing phenomenon, selling millions of copies worldwide and embedding the Templars firmly in popular consciousness as guardians of the bloodline of Jesus Christ. The author's intricate narrative connected the Knights to the Priory of Sion, Merovingian dynasties, and ultimately to a secret that could supposedly shake the foundations of Christianity. The explosive success of Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code in 2003, which borrowed heavily from The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, further cemented the Templars' place in contemporary mythology. Hollywood's fascination with the order reached its apex with Ridley Scott's 2005 epic Kingdom of Heaven and the 2017 History Channel series Nightfall. These productions attempted more nuanced historical portrayals while still incorporating elements of mystery and conspiracy that audiences had come to expect. The tension between historical accuracy and mythological appeal remains unresolved in these works, reflecting the broader cultural ambivalence about whether we prefer our Templars as flesh-and-blood historical figures or as larger-than-life symbols of hidden knowledge and power.
The digital revolution has transformed how Templar mythology circulates and evolves. Internet forums, YouTube channels, and social media platforms have created spaces where historical research, speculative theory, fiction, and conspiracy can intermingle freely, often without clear demarcation. Amateur historians share discoveries from obscure archives alongside elaborate theories connecting the Templars to everything from extraterrestrial contact to advanced technology. These digital spaces function as modern equivalents of medieval storytelling traditions, where history blends with legend through collective elaboration. Video games have emerged as particularly powerful vehicles for Templar imagery. The immensely popular Assassin's Creed franchise, which has sold over 155 million copies worldwide, places the Templars at the center of an elaborate alternative history spanning millennia. In this fictional universe, the Templars represent order, control, and hierarchy, locked in eternal conflict with the freedom-fighting assassins. This portrayal reflects contemporary anxieties about surveillance, corporate power, and individual liberty, recasting the medieval order as the ultimate embodiment of authoritarian tendencies. Tourism has been transformed by Templar mythology, with sites connected to the historical knights attracting visitors seeking both educational and mystical experiences. Locations like Roslin Chapel in Scotland have seen visitor numbers increase exponentially following their appearance in Templar-related fiction.
tour companies offer specialized Templar trails across Europe, promising access to hidden symbolism and esoteric knowledge not available to ordinary tourists. The economic impact of this phenomenon is substantial, with entire regional tourism strategies built around Templar associations. The Templars have also inspired numerous modern organizations claiming spiritual or organizational descent from the medieval order. Groups like the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, founded in 1804 and receiving official recognition from some governments, pursue charitable activities while preserving Templar traditions and symbolism. More esoteric organizations, like the Ordo Supremus Militaris Templi Hierosolymatani, claim direct initiatic succession. These groups range from serious historical and charitable societies to commercial enterprises selling memberships and regalia. Academic research on the Templars has simultaneously been stimulated and complicated by this popular fascination. Historians like Malcolm Barber, Helen Nicholson, and Barbara Frail have produced rigorous scholarly works attempting to separate historical fact from accumulated myth. Yet their careful analyses rarely receive the public attention granted to more sensational interpretations. The gap between academic understanding and popular perception of the Templars continues to widen, creating parallel narratives that barely intersect. Perhaps most significantly, the Templars have become a universal metaphor for hidden knowledge and suppressed truth. When conspiracy theories emerge about contemporary institutions or events, they frequently reference Templar precedents or directly implicate supposed Templar successors. The phrase modern Templars appears in discussions of banking families, political dynasties, intelligence agencies, and corporate elites, a shorthand for power that operates beyond public scrutiny or accountability. This cultural afterlife reflects something profound about human psychology and our relationship to history. The Templars occupy a unique position, historically documented yet surrounded by genuine mystery, powerful enough to shape their era, yet ultimately vulnerable to destruction, orthodox in their stated mission, yet associated with heterodox knowledge. This combination creates a perfect screen onto which each generation can project its own preoccupations, fears, and hopes. In our secular age, the Templars offer a peculiar kind of enchantment, a bridge between verified history and numinous possibility, between the rational world of documented facts and the shadowy realm of secret knowledge. They satisfy both our desire for historical understanding and our hunger for mystery in an increasingly demystified world. Their continued presence in our cultural imagination suggests that we need such figures, entities that stand at the crossroads of history and myth, embodying both the factual past we can study and the mysterious past forever beyond our complete comprehension. As medieval historian Umberto Eco observed shortly before his death, the Templars have the advantage of being extinct, or at least assumed to be extinct. They can therefore be made responsible for everything without fear of contradiction. They offer the perfect blank slate for every imagination, every anxiety, and every hope. In this sense, the Templars are more alive today than they were in the 14th century. Not as a physical organization, but as a cultural force of inexhaustible versatility and enduring power.
Twilight falls over the ruins of a Templar commandery in rural France. The ancient stones, weathered by 7 centuries of sun and rain, cast long shadows across the overgrown courtyard where knights once trained for war in distant lands. A visitor standing in this quiet place might reasonably conclude that the Templars belong entirely to the past, a medieval order that rose, flourished, and perished, leaving behind only crumbling structures and dusty parchments. Yet as we have seen throughout this exploration, the story of the Templars defies such neat conclusions. The question posed at the outset, are they still alive today, reveals itself to be more complex and profound than it first appeared.
For the Templars exist now in multiple dimensions simultaneously, as historical figures documented in medieval records, as a spiritual current flowing through esoteric traditions, as a cultural archetype of enduring power, and for some, as a literal organization that survived its apparent destruction to operate across the centuries. The historical evidence presents us with tantalizing patterns that resist both simple dismissal and absolute proof. We have traced threads of continuity from the Templar suppression through Renaissance brotherhoods, 18th century Freemasonry, Enlightenment secret societies, and modern esoteric organizations. We have observed the persistence of distinctive Templar symbols, architectural techniques, financial innovations, and navigational knowledge after the order's official extinction. We have noted the curious overlap between regions of Templar refuge and the later emergence of significant historical developments. Yet we have also recognized how easily human minds find patterns where perhaps none exist, how powerfully we are drawn to narratives of hidden continuity and secret knowledge. The boundary between legitimate historical inference and speculative overreach remains contested territory, with orthodox historians and alternative researchers drawing that line in very different places. Perhaps the most intellectually honest position lies in embracing this ambiguity rather than forcing a definitive conclusion. The survival of the Templars exists not as a binary fact to be proven or disproven, but as a spectrum of possibilities, each with varying degrees of evidence and plausibility.
At the spectrum's far end lies the most expansive interpretation, that the Templars not only survived, but flourished in secret, growing into a hidden force of immense influence that continues to shape world events from behind the scenes. This view, popularized in conspiracy literature and certain esoteric circles, sees in the Templars the prototype of a shadow government operating across centuries through front organizations, financial systems, and initiated agents in positions of power. Rather than declaring one position definitively correct, we might better honor both historical rigor and the mystery at the heart of this subject by acknowledging that elements of truth may exist at multiple points along this spectrum. The historical record suggests that Templar survival was neither as complete as the most elaborate conspiracy theories claim, nor as non-existent as conventional academic dismissals suggest. What emerges from our exploration is a more nuanced understanding, that the Templars underwent not extinction but transformation. Their physical organization was indeed destroyed, but their essence found new expressions adapted to new eras. Whether this transformation was orchestrated by conscious human agents, emerged organically through cultural evolution, or represents some combination of both processes remains the essential mystery. This transformative survival manifested in multiple ways simultaneously. Certain Templar knowledge survived through technical transmission, architectural techniques preserved in stonemasons' guilds, navigational methods continued in maritime traditions, and financial innovations adopted by banking families. Templar symbolism survived through cultural transmission. Visual motifs, ritual elements, and mythological themes appearing in new contexts with varying degrees of conscious connection to their origins. And, perhaps most significantly, the Templar essence survived, their unique fusion of warrior discipline, mystical spirituality, practical innovation, and international vision, finding new expressions in subsequent organizations. The persistence of the Templar legacy through these various channels suggests that what survived was not merely an organization, but an archetype, a particular configuration of human potentials that responds to perennial needs in Western culture. The Templars represented a balance of seemingly opposing forces: religious devotion and worldly effectiveness,
martial prowess and spiritual insight, hierarchical order and innovative freedom, public service and initiatic secrecy. This integration of apparent opposites created a uniquely powerful template that continues to resonate across centuries. In this light, we might say the Templars survive most authentically not in any single modern organization claiming their mantle, but in the continued reemergence of their archetypal pattern in new forms, suited to new historical contexts. Whenever we encounter groups that combine pragmatic effectiveness in the world with dedication to transcendent principles, that balance tradition with innovation, that work at the creative boundaries between different knowledge systems, there we find the Templar spirit alive, whatever names such groups may bear.
This understanding allows us to recognize the Templars' survival without requiring literal organizational continuity. Their essence could be transmitted through various channels, some direct and conscious, others indirect and unconscious, while adapting to changing circumstances. A completely underground survival maintaining unchanged medieval forms would likely have become increasingly irrelevant. True survival required evolution. Yet this perspective need not dismiss the possibility of more literal continuities existing alongside symbolic and archetypal transmission. History offers numerous examples of initiatic traditions maintaining themselves through centuries of persecution by adapting outward forms while preserving inner teachings. The evidence we have examined suggests at least the possibility that some direct transmission of Templar tradition occurred through specific lineages, even as the broader influence spread through more diffuse cultural channels. Perhaps the most profound form of Templar survival lies in how they continue to function as guardians of mystery itself in our collective imagination. In an age of increasing transparency, surveillance, and demystification, the Templars represent the persistence of the unknown, the possibility that beneath the surface of recorded history flow deeper currents, invisible to conventional observation. They stand for the perennial human intuition that reality is more complex, more mysterious, and perhaps more meaningful than our ordinary frameworks acknowledge. This guardian function may be their most important legacy in contemporary culture. The Templar narrative reminds us that history is not merely a collection of documented facts, but a vast territory containing genuine mysteries, unknown influences, and hidden connections. It preserves the possibility of depth in a world increasingly dominated by surfaces, of long historical patterns in a culture fixated on the immediate, of meaningful coherence beneath apparent chaos. Whether one views them as historical casualties, transformed survivors, or eternal archetypes, the Templars continue to serve as a bridge between the visible and the invisible aspects of Western civilization. They connect our rational understanding to our mythic imagination, our documented history to our intuited patterns, our everyday consciousness to the mysteries that still call to us from the shadows of the past. As we conclude our exploration, we return to the question that initiated our journey. Are the Templars still alive today? The answer, like the order itself, refuses to be confined to simple categories. They live in the documented influence of their innovations on banking, navigation, and architecture. They live in the symbols and rituals preserved through various esoteric traditions. They live as cultural archetypes of enduring power in our literature, films, and digital creations. And perhaps, in ways that remain necessarily obscured, they live through lineages of transmission that have maintained some essence of their tradition through the centuries. In the final analysis, the greatest testament to Templar survival may be the very fact that we continue to ask this question 7 centuries after Jacques de Molay's execution. Few medieval organizations command such persistent fascination, generate such extensive literature, or inspire such dedicated research. This continuing resonance suggests that, regardless of the specific mechanisms of transmission, something of the Templar spirit remains vitally present in our world, a flame that has found new vessels as old ones shattered, an essence that has endured beyond the destruction of its original form. As twilight deepens over the ancient commandery, the visitor might sense that the silence of these stones contains not an ending, but a continuation, that the Templars' journey from historical reality into legend represents not their death, but their ultimate triumph over the limitations of time and the specific fate that befell their medieval incarnation. For in becoming legend, they achieved a form of immortality more powerful and enduring than mere organizational persistence could ever provide. The Templar legacy reminds us that the most profound historical influences often operate not through unbroken institutional continuity, but through the persistence of ideas, symbols, and archetypes that resurface in new forms suited to new eras. Whether through conscious transmission, unconscious cultural memory, or the perennial reemergence of certain patterns of human organization, the essence that animated those warrior monks continues to manifest in our world, adapting its expression while maintaining its core integrity.